Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Ray, and this is my podcast, The Next Act. Today, I am here with one of my dear friends, Dr. Sarah Haynes. My podcast is I talk to accomplished professionals they've done a lot of interesting things, but they are on to their next act or they are looking for their next act. So today, I'm going to talk to Dr. B of CoachEra. So, Dr. B, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm so thrilled to be here at the hub at Logic, Office Logic, and especially with you being in the tech community. It's important to be able to have supportive systems and collective cultures around you and people to be able to help you with the ups and downs of entrepreneurship, of life. And as a clinical psychologist, my career has been really based on helping people navigate the challenges of life,
Okay.
but also celebrate the wins with your community and build and scaffold on your strength based skills and knowledge. And I'm excited to be able to dig in with you today.
How long have you been here in Miami?
We moved to Miami in 2017 from Silicon Valley to prove that Silicon Valley is a concept where people were working out of garages and collaborating and working together and building innovative ideas. And it's a concept that became a little bit toxic in San Francisco, and we were looking for our next act, I guess, next move of where we could take our collective knowledge network from Hollywood to Washington, D.C. to Silicon Valley. Because when you're building startups and you're building companies, and we were in a venture capital firm, so we worked and invested in some of the early investment in stage B with Uber, Airbnb, Slack, Rent the Runway, the first female IPO.
Hey.
So we've had some really great wins. TaskRabbit, which is an African American CEO, woman CEO. So our thesis has always been about looking for opportunities and being a voice for the underrepresented and being able to really help level the playing field and open pathways and doorways and pipelines for investment. So we shared our allocations with a lot of individuals that are African American and women VCs and investors that normally wouldn't have access to a deal like Uber,
Okay.
and made millions and millions for them. And so we came to Florida to answer your question, to be able to really help build that and bring smart capital. And the perfect storm happened with COVID, where people came, we build it and they come, but people were building this, over decades prior to that. So we're building together and bringing whatever resources we have to the table, to the OGs, as we call them in Miami as well.
Nice. Yeah, I always like to, whenever I talk to people, I always like to acknowledge that people have been building here for decades,
100%.
and it's only recently that we've gotten that sort of nationwide or even worldwide exposure. But people have been building here for 40 years,
100%.
and Miami is a city of entrepreneurs, of immigrants. So you sort of get that. It's just now we have the exposure to go with it.
That's right. And people went to out west for opportunities, and people came down south with Flagler and the train
Yeah,
for opportunities. And this
Julia Tuttle, the original.
woman, first city built by a woman, entrepreneur. And I think what part of what attracted us here, I went to graduate school here in 93 through 2000, worked in group homes. I've worked in the University of Miami Mailman Center for Child Development. I've worked in multidisciplinary teams with medical health issues. And so I really wanted to come back to a place where it was filled with incredible diversity in a city made of immigrants
Yeah.
that really came here to succeed
Mhm.
and to start a new life. And I always talk about, as a cross-cultural psychologist, when people come to the United States or make a move, they don't come here to fail. They don't upheal, heave their whole life to be able to come somewhere where they don't know anyone to fail. So people come here as immigrants to succeed. They
Yes.
come here and they're hardworking, super intelligent, super knowledgeable, well-educated individuals from Cuba to Venezuela. And these are government kind of collapses that have happened that have forced people to get out to survive.
Yeah.
And that resilience is what we celebrate as a family foundation. Our bishop are built on that as well. And so I wear many hats, literally and figuratively. I took mine off so the camera can show my face a little bit better, but we'll dig into a lot of the other things that I'm involved with as well.
Amazing. Yeah. I love talking to people that wear a lot of different hats because I do too. Not only do I help run this co-working space, the hub, but I also, I'm very involved in the community. I have a day job as well. And I think that's interesting because a lot of people in Miami have like 8 jobs. And they have a thing they do for money. They have their side gig. They have their other side hustle, like, and they have their passion project. And I really appreciate that because one thing I found when I was in Silicon Valley, I was there 2017, 2016, is that people tend to just focus on like the one thing, whether it's a startup or the corporate job. That's it. That's sort of their entire life.
Yeah.
And that was never me. I like to have like a lot of things going on at once.
Yeah.
So Miami is a good fit for me because of that hustle culture,
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah. I want to kind of also reframe that because I think when we say hustle, it sounds like you're being hustled
Yeah.
and that there isn't a deep level of knowledge that you bring to the table from Microsoft and marketing and technology. And it's not just about, being a surface level professional to be able to get you to the next act. It's really about learning and deep learning and being a lifelong learner,
Yes,
right? Because
absolutely.
as people have more access to AI has been around.
Yep.
Blockchain has been around. Um, and so there are waves of interest that happen, and people may not be knowledgeable about it, but it's really important as a tenure professor. I'm always learning. And I tell my students if I don't know something, I'm not going to bullshit you. I'm going to go and research it, and we'll research it together and come back and, and be a critical thinker of information and knowledge. And the people that you want to work with, it's also important to make sure they have the same values, same background, same work ethic as well. And I think that hustle is really about looking at opportunities and
Yeah.
seeing where you can bring your story and your skills and be able to articulate that in a way that is transferable skills to the
Yes.
new position. And that's
Absolutely.
the storytelling that you're so good at. And we all need to kind of really focus on as we build our own kind of brands.
Narratives are very important, I always say.
So,
My saying recently has been like, we all have narratives, whether we like it or not. And you can either culture your narrative and mold it, or the streets will do it for you.
100%. 100%.
And that's the thing I have to teach a lot of people because I think people think they have it by default, or they don't have to worry about it. It's like a credit score. It's there whether you like it or not.
Right.
So
And I think that what you said is, cultivating it, curating it, really highlighting and showcasing it, because most people don't know all you do in a day. If there was a camera that walked around with me, they think that it's a glamorous life. As an
yeah,
executive coach, I work with some top celebrities and individuals, and they're all human.
yeah,
I can name drop, but the idea is really that everyone is dealing with challenges in life
yep,
and how they navigate those challenges. And as the more success you get, as the more public you go into the public eye, you become more of a target because
yep,
not everyone wants to see you succeed,
absolutely,
because that means that somehow you're taking away a piece of the pie that's theirs.
yep,
And that's what happened in Silicon Valley. We were sharing allocations with a lot of individuals that normally wouldn't have the pipeline. And we held salons for African American venture capitalists and really share that pipeline with women and underrepresented,
yep.
because 1% goes to startup founders, but also the venture capitalists are not even getting access to it to be able to then distribute that capital to founders that are women and underrepresented.
Amazing. I We know CoachEra is what you're currently doing. Can you give us sort of a long story short of where you've been and what you've done?
With CoachEra?
I would love to know, how you got to CoachEra.
Sure, sure. CoachEra is really a culmination of everything I've done in my career. That's over 25 years of work. I was 29 when I finished my PhD. So I've been really focused on getting the deep, deep knowledge about human behavior and human resilience. I'm a child of war and revolution. And so as a child, I didn't have much of a voice. And my goal as a middle child also was to keep peace and keep things moving and helping support everyone and making sure that everyone was where they needed to be, which are the skills I learned now as an
Yeah.
operator, as a tech founder. I started several different companies, which I'll get to, but as a serial entrepreneur, you're building teams, you're building companies. And I've moved many, many times just in the last almost 25 years of marriage. We've moved 17 times, we've counted,
Wow.
for our doctorate opportunities, residency, postdoctoral fellowship at Georgetown, opportunities for MBAs at Wharton, and opportunities in Silicon Valley. So that whole idea of looking for opportunity in your next act, which
Yeah.
is what we're talking about today, is really having an open mind,
Hmm.
an open lens of what's out there. What are resources? What are communities that I can add to before I extract value? I'm going to add to
Yes.
it. And that's been my thesis, and our family values always to be able to
Ma-
bring in value. So I built CoachEra based on evidence-based research, which is my background as a researcher at Georgetown.
Okay.
I did my postdoctoral fellowship with health disparities in African American women and Latina women. And I wanted to bring that multidisciplinary lens from the medical school into the business school. So I took it from the classroom of I had over 1,000 students to working on this platform and this miracle goal setting methodology
Okay.
that's based on token economy, reward systems, and a lot of the things that you learn in the book of that we're looking at that people are really focused on atomic habits is really based on my supervisor, my dissertation chair, Nathan Ashenmore. It was a student of B.F. Skinner about behavioral change. How do we change behavior so that we don't go into depression, we don't go into anxiety, we don't succumb to a life that we are not designing? And
Okay.
so I want to empower people to design and cultivate a life that's worth living. And that's really why I built CoachEra, to help integrate their personal and professional life based on their values and their strengths.
Designing your own life, I think, is very important. Last night, we actually had an event here that was a vision board event.
Oh, nice.
And we had like 50 people here in the hub, and they were designing their vision boards. And I didn't make one, I was too busy running the event. But, but I walked around and was sort of looking at everyone. And what I loved was that there was like, no, there wasn't one vision board or two that were even close to the same. They were completely different styles, different things, and whatever. And I really like that. There wasn't two that were even close.
Right.
And I think that's important about designing your life is that, it's what you make it, and it's going to be very different from what someone else how someone else is designing their life.
That's right. And when you say design your life, it's like design your house. It's overwhelming to think about, okay, what are the different components? What's my style? What are the things that are important to me now in this stage of my life, which is different. Your
Hmm.
priorities are different than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, right? But your core values are something that you have to always go back to and look at, because when you're building your vision board and designing your life, I provide 5 pillars for the framework that we use that's based on human wellness. And that includes, the first pillar is financial and career goals. We spend 8 hours or more, how hard we work around our careers, right?
Yes.
And we make choices based on our financial needs. Sometimes we do volunteer work. Sometimes we have to, make sure we're getting paid for our value to be able to reach our other goals as well. So financial and career goals are really important, and having the lens of your values of why you say yes to certain things and no to others. The second pillar is your leadership and personal evolution. How do you want to lead? What kind of leader do you want to be? Do you want to use some samples that people didn't exactly weren't really ideal and do the opposite of it? Or do you want to really cultivate what positive leadership looks like? And personal growth is something that you're continuously growing and continuously learning. The third one, which is really important, most executive coaches do not focus on as much, is health and wellness.
Okay.
And we know, COVID stopped the world. There's no research that I could have ever done that would allow me to stop the world the way it did.
Yeah.
And we're going to find out so much information about how that's changed how people see their world based on their health and wellness, and making that a priority in their decision making of what kind of balanced life that millennials and so forth want. I'm a Gen Xer, so I didn't get the memo that you're supposed to have a balanced life. So, but I've learned to be able to have an integrated life, which means
Can can you tell me a little bit more about what an integrative life means?
absolutely. So, integrative life is really looking at your personal and professional goals. So, I was talking about your career and financial goals, your health and wellness, your family intimate relationship is your fourth, and the fifth one is your community network. So, these 5 pillars are really important because you can integrate them all and say yes to something that hits all 5, or at least more than one. When you say yes to something, it should also hit some other aspect of it. And I make an example of how to integrate your personal and professional life with the limited time that we have, how to optimize your time and optimize your performance is an example that I do on Wednesdays in Brickell. I host a coffee wellness walk and talk, and I sponsor it with CoachEra funding for coffee. I buy coffee for everyone or tea or whatever, water, whatever they want. And we set an intention for the week. In that 1 hour, we're talking about one of the pillars. We're focused on health and wellness. We're getting the early morning sun. It's from 7 to 8 a.m. Early morning sun, which you've ever done the research, it actually helps you regulate your sleep, regulate your hormones. It helps you with your mood.
Yeah.
So getting that early morning sunlight is really, really important for your pituitary gland, which helps you be able to balance your hormones and motivation, right?
Okay.
So that example, you're hitting the health and wellness community network. If you bring your partner or friends, family, and intimate relationship, people do that. They bring their partners, and you're working on your career. And so in that 1 hour, you can hit all five. So try to think about things before you say yes. Is this going to be additive or taking away from my health and wellness, my family, my community, or does it add to it? So you don't go to all these busy, networking events that really don't align with your values, because the delta between our values and our behavior is really where psychological conflict exists. It's where burnout exists. It's where relationship conflict exists. So we want to shorten that delta.
Yeah.
And the way to do that is to make sure your behaviors and your values are aligned. And when your behaviors and values are aligned, then you can go to sleep at night, put your head on the pillow, and know that you've lived by your values and that saying yes through a lens of your values.
For me, burnout is something that I am very passionate about preventing it. And I burned out in my early mid to mid 20s
Mm.
when I worked at Microsoft.
Yeah.
It wasn't their fault. It was my fault
Sure.
for overworking. But I did it all. I did the 16-hour days and nights, weekends, holidays, whatever. And the thing is, I enjoyed it
Right.
at the time, but it didn't get me anywhere.
Mm.
And that's what I learned is that I worked to literally to the bone until I was ill and depressed.
Mhm.
And it didn't get me to where I wanted to go. And once again, it's not Microsoft's fault, or corporation's fault. They're going to take whatever you give them.
Right.
And that's what I had to learn.
Yep.
And now in my 30s, when I go out for jobs or take jobs, I take them with that now in mind. I'm going to give this job what it needs, what's required,
Right.
but that's it. It's not going to be a personality. It's not going to be my all.
Right. And I invite you to also, if I may, do some on the spot coaching.
Of
If the
course.
frame that didn't get you anywhere is actually a false, from the evidence that I see,
Yeah.
it did get you somewhere. It got you to this place where you can now say, I was at Microsoft, I was at Silicon Valley, I know what the grind looks like, and I chose to design my life. I still work hard. I'm sure you're working 16-hour days, but the energy you put forth is in your control. And there were studies done on rats and mice that if they can control the shock that they receive, they were much less likely to have this cortisol levels released than when they were being shocked randomly. So the more you can control the shocks of life,
Yeah.
the more you're able to not get burned out. And I heard one of my dear friends and experts on the platform, she's studying integrative health as well. And she said that this idea of burning yourself to warm up others is where burnout comes from. Right?
Yeah.
So you give so much to others, you make other people's priority, but why not make yourself a priority? You don't cancel when you live by your calendar, you don't cancel, right? And if you have to cancel, it's usually because of something really major and you give them notice and you communicate that. But you cancel on yourself every day.
Yeah.
So why not use the same techniques you use for others? Put it on your calendar. Make sure you have time set for yourself and see how many times you actually don't cancel on yourself.
Yeah.
And see if you're living by your values for yourself, being a person that's giving and caring for others and really pouring that into yourself so you can have more to energy to be able to do and design your life the way you want.
Yeah. And that is the biggest change that I've made in my 30s now is that I do work hard and I do have long days, But there are days that at 5 o'clock, I clock out and I'm done. I don't look at my computer or my laptop and I go for a walk in the park here in Miami or go to the beach and I don't, it's out of mind. And that's how I stay sane and how I design my life. I work really hard, but I also relax really hard. I don't know if that's a thing. So I think, and I also deal with a lot of friends and a lot of entrepreneurs because of where I am and what I do. And I preach now about anti-burnout, anti-grind. And yes, I know to be an entrepreneur, you have to work hard and you long hours, but you cannot work yourself to death.
Yeah. And the methodology that I use based on the token economy is really important. I have, I have a 17-year-old, I have a 23-year-old, and what scares me, and as a faculty, when I worked with millennials, people thought they're entitled. They just want to take it easy and not, they can roll over out of bed and be on Zoom in their classes. They don't have to do all the things we had to do. Every generation has their own stress. Every generation has their own issues. But this token economy is something that's so important. It basically says, I'm going to set up and to scaffold my life based on the things. If I want to set a goal, I'm going to start a baby goal. So we do a 1 month goal. What can you do towards your 1 month goal? Because next year, this time, where do you want to be?
Yeah.
Right? We don't, at New Year's Eve, we're like, celebrating or we're having a quiet evening and we set some intentions, right? Sometimes people are doing anti resolutions, which is fine. But all of us need to take time to inventory. Where do I want to be next year this time? What are the things that I did, the wins that I had this year that I'm overlooking? 'Cause sometimes as overachievers, we high five, we get to this goal that we've been grinding and working so hard and praying about and worrying about and losing sleep over. And we get to it and we're like, all right, great. And let's move on to the next thing. And that's when you said relax, make sure you relax hard.
Yeah.
When you get to that high five moment, that's when you just need to stop with your team. We won the number one startup in Miami on Forbes list of all startups in the world, in the
Okay.
country, because of our team culture and values. So it's really important. When you have deadlines, you're going to have 17 hours a day in a
Of
startup.
course.
You're going to have to work hard when you have deliverables and things that you are shipping out in the technology world. But you need to pause
Yes.
and celebrate with the people that brought you to the party is my tagline, right?
With the people, I
Right.
love that. With people who brought you the party.
Right. Who supported you? Who was that one person that said, I got you. I'm going to stay with you. We're going to do this. Build those tight relationships because when when the rubber meets the road, it's those people that are going to be with you. Everyone's going to be with you when you have champagne popping, right? And those are the fair weather friends. Those are the people that are going to continue to kind of target you because you've made certain successes. But the people who are there for you when you're down, when you're having health crisis, your family's having issues, those are the real people. And that's why I developed CoachEra. So you have a community of people with the same mind. Because when you're in crisis, you don't know which attorney to call to. You don't know which accountant to call. You don't know which medical doctor to call. You don't know which psychologist to call. And there's nothing more helpless than having your loved one or yourself suffering through some crisis and not know who you can trust as vetted experts.
Yeah.
So CoachEra is that platform that I built using my own needs as benchmark.
Okay.
And helping people know that they can come to CoachEra and find a multidisciplinary team of experts. They're going to have master's, doctorate, or 5 years of subject matter 10 years of subject matter expertise. And they've been vetted by myself and our team.
Okay.
And so it's not these life coaches that don't have life experiences, that haven't gone through the grind that you have.
Yeah.
And can help teach and coach and mentor and consult on this platform. It's a turnkey platform.
Yep.
And it's free right now. So you can go and put up your profile and set up your schedule, your rates, connect your Stripe, or we can use our Stripe and give you your percentages right now. You hold 75%.
Okay.
You're a referral source.
Okay.
You keep 75%. You own, it's an LMS. You can upload courses onto it and it's free.
I love it. That's amazing.
That's really the beauty of being in a position in my life now that I can design and build the companies that are important to me, that I needed when things were hard, and to be able to share my network and my community broadly, there's nothing better as a connector as, when somebody's having an issue to be able to solve that problem for them.
I love it. I want you to tell me two things about CoachEra. Number one, I want you to give me the elevator pitch for it. I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
And then secondly, I want to know who it's for.
Mhm.
And thirdly, give me sort of a overall of like how it works. Just sort of an A to Z.
So using the technology terms, it's a SaaS platform, software as a service, but we also call it coaching as a service.
Cass.
So CAS, and it's a marketplace model. So you have individuals just like Uber that can log on to the platform, put their profile up, and we match you with the individual based on the things that people are looking for and your keywords on your profile. So it's a marketplace for experts with master's, doctorate, or 10 years of subject matter expertise that can use the platform to as a referral source. Just like you have health grades, people can see what are good doctors, people can score them. And it's a platform where coaches, consultants, or even mentors can upload their profile, their LMS, teaching materials. We have a curriculum developer now that can help you build your courses. So who's an educator, an MBA, and can help you build a course so you can make money asynchronously from anywhere in the world while you're sleeping, or synchronously, which means that you can set up your schedule and your Zooms to be able to have one-on-one sessions for 30 minutes, 1 hour, or which is different is questions. And we have a library of questions that I can ask of you, and you can give me a video response, and people can see someone asked you a question. I want to know the answer from you, by Fashan, from Emil from Uber, for all these people that have really done some amazing things that are on our platform, and they can tap into that knowledge. So it's a way to share knowledge that is really disrupting the education system and disrupting how we learn and how we share knowledge that is up to date and it's not outdated. Then on the other side of the marketplace is individuals looking for coaches because there's so much noise in the world of coaching. Anyone can become a coach. And so we have the ability to connect you through, we also have an AI component now that does adaptive assessment to make sure you're learning the things you need to learn on these different modules and curriculum that is on there. And so that's really the beauty of CoachEra is a marketplace, a two-sided marketplace for individuals to be able to market their coaching services, consulting services, or mentorship, and for individuals to find coaches or both. You can be a coach and look for a coach. I have coaches for different things. And it's multidisciplinary, multicultural because I want to showcase women, underrepresented, and our allies. So that's the platform at CoachEra.
I love it. That sounds really interesting. If you had to say, since we love talking about Uber, how would you describe CoachEra? Like, people say Uber for X. What would that be for CoachEra?
It would be Uber for coaches, right? For people to be able to have on-demand access to a library of knowledge, library of individuals, consultants, mentors, and coaches. CoachEra is a new era in coaching, but it's really looking at how do we make sure that we use technology for good and be able to connect people and have a safe place where you can go and know that you're getting vetted experts.
And vetted is very important so that you know that there is experience to back up what they're telling you.
Exactly. Exactly. And we ask for transcripts if they say they have MBAs or a master's and doctorate. And then the 10 years of subject matter expertise is also their LinkedIn's are noted there. And so it's really a wonderful, wonderful community where we can help one another give referrals and get referrals.
Amazing. So one thing we had talked about earlier is how you have worked in change management for companies before. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that. And also if you have any advice for companies out there that are going through change. Because right now, the startup and entrepreneurial world is a little wild. I think I've been saying this that the end of 2023 and beginning of 2024 is we're finally starting to clear out some of the COVID craziness, both from zero interest rate and beyond. So we're trying to clear out some of that mess.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of change happening. A lot of companies going under. A lot of companies are changing, laying off,
Yeah.
all that fun stuff. So I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on
Yeah.
that.
So the impetus, and when I first started working, I was recruited to a venture capital firm in Silicon Valley with 650 million under management. People looked at me like I was where they didn't know where to put me. They didn't know what kind of category to put me in because I was a licensed clinical psychologist in a venture capital firm. And they said, what are you doing here? Right. And I'm a researcher. So I did diligence on health tech and ed tech. And before Billions came out, there was no Windy Rhodes. Right. And once Windy Rhodes came out, everyone was like, oh, you have to watch it. You're the real life Windy Rhodes from Billions. And I
You're like, duh.
it's like, no, I don't have time to watch, HBO shows or whatever, but I'll watch it. And I did. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. There is a psychiatrist that works for a hedge fund that deals with optimizing performance for people who are under a lot of pressure. People think just because you're successful, just because you have an education, just because outwardly social media shows that you've made it, quote unquote, or are raising capital and you're an entrepreneur and it's all sexy. Nobody knows behind the closed doors, the stress, the tears, the times you're on your knees crying, not knowing how to be able to lay off people.
Yeah.
It is the hardest thing I've ever had to do out of my own family kind of, health issues to ever have to lay off someone. It
Yeah.
is it is torture because I am the one that hired them.
Yeah.
I interviewed every single person at Bold Mobility when I was a CEO of Bold Mobility with this same Bold. We went around the world together. We worked hard in late hours in Japan and
Yeah.
Paris, and it all looks great on these launches and with Eiffel Tower and all. It was hard work and we demanding work, but we did some amazing things.
Yeah.
And to be able to de-risk and treat people with humanity,
Yeah.
with integrity, and making sure that people understand that they say business decisions
Yeah.
and it's so impersonal.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I want to add something there. So I've been through a lot of those things, a lot of them, really good ones and really bad ones. And it's amazing what even sort of like an ounce of humanity does to that process. I understand since I've been on both sides of it, I understand the business of it, but it's people,
It's human
it's
beings.
human beings, and they also may be a number in a spreadsheet,
100%.
but they're also people.
Right.
And the companies that do well are people that are companies that understand that there are two sides to it.
Yeah. And I think sometimes our legal kind of advice and our HR advice, they may give you bad advice. And I'm guilty of it because sometimes I'm like, I defer to them to think, okay, well, they're the ones that know I don't want to cause any liability for the company. But my gut tells me to be able to treat people with integrity and sit down with them and say, these are the things that we're going through and giving them some signal ahead of time if you can, because sometimes if you can't give too much signal and transparency because people will start to leave. And so there's this balance of like, how much information can you give so that people know we're having a tough time raising capital? If you need to look for other positions, then, I want you to know that, but we're working really hard to be able to make sure that we are moving forward. And as I've treated people, I think the hallmark is that I say to treat people the way that you want to be treated, but also if I can reach back to my employees and rehire them, that's the kind of relationship that I want. I've been able to rehire people. I've been able to find positions for them and do the change management and actually the platform I built, CoachEra, when people are being laid off, you can actually use the platform to share your knowledge and to leave institutional knowledge so that people are paying you for that knowledge. First of all, the company can pay you for it. And it's a really soft landing
Okay.
so that they're not without any resources, without any platform to be able to share their knowledge, to generate revenue and income for themselves. Because at the end of the day, we're worried about paying our bills
Yeah.
as employees, right? And so that's important, the human factor of it, but also the risk and liability lens is important when you're looking at it. How do you help people in a toxic environment sometimes to be able to turn things in a positive direction and tell the story of the things that you've learned? And if you have severance, for example, who do you give severance to? How much do you give severance to people? Those are all decisions at the high levels that I've been involved with. And that's another the really difficult things. And there's companies now are doing severance insurance. That's where we are in our environment. And there's a startup here in Miami that does that. It gives you severance insurance, which is really amazing to think about. But ultimately, I think people really need to look at the path of what kind of companies. A startup world is always going to be up and down. The startup world is something that is you learn so much. It's the fastest MBA you can get, but it's also it can do a tailspin on you
Yeah.
if you haven't saved enough money. And being able to have a safety net is really important, to have at least 3 months
Yeah.
of your living set aside so that you don't have the psychological pressure of what am I going to do?
Yeah. I think I told you I actually was affected by a layoff a month ago, and it is what it is. It's life. I worked at a very corporate large company,
Right.
and they laid off like 10%. I was affected. So I'm actually looking for my next act. But it is interesting because I do have some time. I have a few months to do to my search. And I've done startups from 2 people to Fortune 50 companies or even smaller. So for me, I am unsure. Do I want to go back into corporate land where it's cushy and,
Secure.
secure
More or
and
less.
and more or less nothing's really secure.
Secure.
Nothing is secure and, a little boring. Or do I want to jump into an exciting startup that's going to, scratch the brain, but, could be gone tomorrow. So it's like, what would you give advice someone like me knowing my background? What do you think I should do?
I think it's really important. I always make analogies that go back to our personal life, and I make the analogy of dating. Right?
Okay.
When you're in your 15 or 16, the kind of partner you're looking for, the experience you have is very different, right? The manipulation, the games that people play, all those things change all those different stages, right? But in your 20s, what you're looking for, the excitement, the thrill, all of that is different than when you're looking for a lifetime partner, when you're looking to settle with someone to. And so when you go back to your values is what I'm getting to is looking at your values and understanding what are the kinds of legacy markers do you want to leave behind, right? And at this stage in your life, where you've done the startup, where you've done the corporate, you're in a beautiful position, right? All those things happen for you so that now you have this month or 2 months or what have you to be able to really take a breath, right? And evaluate and see what's out there. What are the options out there for you? And see what aligns with your values, right? And you've used this time, and I want to thank you, first of all, on camera, to be able to help me and to be able to speak to people about CoachEra. And you're helping so many other people. And I think anything you do where you're extending yourself, it always comes back to you multiple fold. So if I had the money to hire you, I would hire you right now. So that's
You're gonna
one
get
thing.
you. I think you're gonna get there though. I think CoachEra is a really really cool company. I have to learn some more about it to fully understand it, but it seems really cool. And what I like is I really like when entrepreneurs build things out of passion, and that to me is really important because you can build any company based on any trend of the moment. I could, and I'm really not even a traditional entrepreneur. I never really have been. I do actually do working for people, which is
Right.
which is interesting.
Like,
Uh,
it's a
uh,
different level of stress.
I like when entrepreneurs build things that they are passionate about and are directly from their background.
Yeah.
And I think those are the companies that are built to last and will be around the longest.
Yeah. And the only way I think, for me, for CoachEra is really to partner with others and to build this as a white label company where we can bring it to consultation companies, we can bring it to universities where people can learn in a different way and use the technology, the SaaS platforms to be able to learn in a very disruptive way using AI, using a technology that we have. And my goal really is not to be the CEO for life,
Yeah.
and that wasn't my goal ever to be CEO of Bolt. It was to help it carry to the next level until I can hire somebody to take it to the next level. So that's the stage I'm in. I've done the 0 to 1 sprint I did with Usain Bolt, literally,
Yeah.
the fastest man in the world, and brought in another CEO, female CEO, to take it to the next level. So we have to know like what our goals are, what our limitations are, and detach our ego of what you think is how much you want to be involved with at the to the end nth degree. And
Yeah.
so I think entrepreneurship, to answer your question of how to be able to get through this, it's about partnership. It's about aligning yourself with other companies and being able to see where you align in helping add value to them, right? And not just to your detriment, but to find win-wins. And ultimately, in the business world, those are the companies I think that win. is that they look for ways to be able to meet at the middle ground.
Yeah. So I want to switch gears here really quickly. I want you to tell me one or two companies in Miami that are based here, startups that you appreciate, and they can ones that you're involved in or not. It doesn't matter. But love to hear about some Miami-based companies that you think are great or are good startups.
Yeah. So top of mind comes a couple. And there's so many, first of all. And I think that's what's beautiful about Miami. It attracts some really amazing human beings. But Mushi is one thing, company that comes to mind that is CEOs developed by a technology engineer. And her name is Ariana Techie, if you know her.
Hi, Ariana. We love you.
And she is I think the epitome of what intelligence and combined with passion and combined with adaptability and values means to me. And that when I look for companies, and if I put my investor hat, I look for people like you said that have passion for the the direction of the company, but is able to adapt to the environment of the market conditions. And what they're doing is amazing. Is taking the need for nonprofits to be able to raise money and take company and assets that are sitting around, collectibles, art, cars, books that people want to offload or sell for a tax deduction
Okay.
and a percentage of it. They can keep most of the revenue and give a percentage. I think the last time on a walk and talk, she said something around, I don't want to give the percentage, so it'll be greenly evergreen, but it's a small percentage that goes
Okay.
to the nonprofit. And that's, I think, and we use that as in CoachEra model also, is having a nonprofit benefit is really critical for people who want to spend their money, especially millennials and companies that are giving back to the environment, to the company, to the world, and not just taking from the community. So that's really important. That way people can take whatever they're making off of the platform and donate it to a nonprofit.
Okay.
So that's Mushi. And then a local favorite is Paddle,
Oh, yes.
the Paddle Gents. And because I was in the mobility space, they came to me and asked me if I would be an advisor, and I coached them and I made a small angel investment in them as well. But they are killing it.
Yeah.
They're all over Florida.
I love it. So the paddle, they actually have a setup right here at Market Place Park.
Ah,
And I saw recently that they added kayaks too.
kayaks, they have bicycles, they are all over Virginia Keys where they started on the state park. They're really honest, decent, three gentlemen from Keys, Virginia Keys, and highly educated engineers from FIU to Vanderbilt to it's just really amazing.
Yeah. No, I love it. I have a blow up paddleboard,
Mm,
but it's really heavy and annoying and like dragging it everywhere. It's just amazing to like go to the park here and just push a button on your phone and boom, you have it. And the fact that also they built in like the water monitoring and
yes.
the environmental sensors,
Collecting data.
that's
Yeah.
amazing. It's
Collecting data that helps is for good is always something that I think is important. We also invested in Telly, which is something at CES today that we're launching, and it's basically free 53-inch, I think is the latest
oh, Telly.
TVs.
Yes.
They have basically a running board, just like, the
Secondary
stock,
display.
yeah, the stock market ticker on some of the CNBC and so forth that you watch, but it's basically advertising
Yeah.
in the TV.
I love that.
So
I
it's a
I'm
fun way to,
I love when other people pay for things.
yeah,
And I think, in this day and age, I might be a little bit pessimistic here, but I think illusions of privacy are basically, they have been since basically phones were invented.
exactly.
So, I mean, I do think there are levels to it, but I think, but I think that things like Telly that use advertising, I think it's going to be great because it's going to open up having that type of device to people who could not have it otherwise. And it's in this day and age, you need access to it because it's just like internet or a cell phone. Those are almost requirements for modern daily life.
They have a very smart TV.
Yeah, I mean, and I was reading about it. They were saying not only it's going to do like fitness and all kinds of other things. So it's not just entertainment.
Yeah.
It's going to offer other things.
Yeah, and we invested in health companies and hardware that you can use at home. And so our thesis is really how do you improve lives and make things convenient so people can live healthier, better lives in a way that is designed for them and is curated for them and their values and their interest. And so that you're not not having groupthink either, right? You want to have exposure to different things. And so I think how we do things responsibly in marketing and those kinds of in the technology world is really important.
Yeah.
And there's always problems to be solved. And entrepreneurship is really one way that immigrants and people who don't, have had doors closed to them can open up opportunities and generate revenue. And that's why it's really important to us to make sure that we're helping the underdogs and making sure that we're helping support really smart people that are really hardworking people that happen to be women and underrepresented, not because they're women underrepresented. And that wouldn't do a service to anyone if we just invested and changed our success rate in our venture deals. Because then at the end of the day, they're going to say this group of people don't actually return investment, which the data shows they do. Women underrepresented outpace mainstream companies that are led by men, white men.
So speaking of all of that, the space that we're currently in, the Hub at Office Logic, was
Sure.
founded by an immigrant from Jamaica. Her name is Noelle. And I think most of you know this, but the Hub is an independent space. It's just her. She's a solo entrepreneur and self-funded.
Amazing.
And this space is also the largest co-working space in the United States owned by a Black woman.
Amazing. And what you've helped to make that happen, the allies are really critical, but she is the core
Yeah.
of took the risk to do something during COVID, right? She started this
Yeah.
in a time where people were not working.
Yeah.
And to take that risk is really remarkable.
Well, and that's,
For the community.
that's something, I sort of pick and choose what I get involved in. I am actually selective about it, whether it appears that way or not. And this space and this thing is something that I think Miami needed and is really good for the community in general. And for instance, Noelle is amazing. Has an amazing head for business.
Mm,
She isn't particularly a people person.
mm.
That's not her skill set.
More of an introvert.
Yeah, introvert.
You'll say.
And being a people person, extrovert, that's my skill set.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we work well together because she, handles the back end and the admin and the legal and the business part of stuff that I don't really like.
Yeah.
And I handle the front end and the people and the community and the marketing. And also I get to be an ally for her
It's critical.
because this is kind of terrible, but she's an African American woman, Caribbean, and sometimes people don't take her seriously.
Mhm.
It's terrible.
I felt it. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is terrible. And so for me, I try and be an ally for her so that to help more people take her seriously. I shouldn't have to.
No, you shouldn't.
I shouldn't have to, but that is one of my roles.
Yeah. And I've said this, something that's very controversial sometimes is as a cross-cultural psychologist, it's really, really important. We've donated, money to Howard University where my father went. My children are biracial. I say all this. I grew up in Washington, D.C., where it's completely diverse.
Yeah.
And when you grow up in that environment, you don't realize what a privilege and honor it is to be able to every day be able to hear multiple languages,
Yeah.
Ethiopian, Middle Eastern, Asian, everyone in the same kind of environment. And when I moved away from that, when I'm in places and spaces where there isn't diversity, I get uncomfortable. Right. And we want to be around people that we're comfortable with, we know, we've been exposed to. And that's human nature that we're attracted to people that look like us
Yeah.
or have a similar kind of background or upbringing. So
Yeah.
that's the psychology of it. But the reality of what you're doing and what is critically important when you do have a level of privilege, let's say,
Yeah.
how you're able to navigate that and be able to open up cracks in the door
Yeah.
because they're going to have to kick it in, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
and make it happen. And she's doing it. Right?
Yes.
And when I say when I say look at companies, if when we say diversity, it doesn't mean that the whole company has to be women. The whole
Yes.
company has to be African American. The whole company and leadership have to be any one particular minority. That's actually doing a disservice. The
Yeah.
research shows that you have to have representation from all different backgrounds.
Exactly.
And that's what you have built here.
Yeah.
When I walk in, we have people from Timberland to, startups and, people in suits to shorts to every age, every culture, every color, every
Yeah.
religion. And I think that's the beauty of the hub and the beauty of Miami is that you can cultivate that. And I want to speak a little bit to the personality styles of architecting the right teams and how to be able to ensure that you're not just hiring for what the person looks like, but
Yeah.
what and their background, but what are their personality types. And you've touched on it. Introverts can be people persons, people, but in limited capacity, in
Yeah.
bite sizes, because it saps their energy, right?
Sure.
And they need to go back and refuel before they come to these huge events. Whereas
Yeah.
you and I, we get fueled by being in those environments, right? It energizes us. We still need to go back and refuel. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that we're like extroverts all the time and we don't need to refuel, but being around people is important and knowing what jobs. If you're hiring for marketing, you don't want an introvert, right?
Yeah.
If you want someone who is detail oriented, you want someone who is going to be really focused on having time to understand all of the different analysis that they need to do. You want them in your accounting team. You want them on jobs that are very detail oriented. And so the big five are the personality types that I want to leave you with in terms of tangible things when you're looking to build teams or even your partners in life or your partners in work. You want to look at their personality because personality psychology is something that's developed very early on and shaped very early on, and it's very difficult to change.
Yeah.
So you can't change your partner's personality, your children's personality. You can influence them, but they can't change them. When they have to want to change. So the earliest markers of personality are like around age 3 when
Yeah.
people start showing their personality. So if I asked your mom, what was Ryan like? She's in town, right?
Yeah.
What was Ryan like when he was around 3? I bet you she would say he was extrovert, outgoing, a people person, was getting into a lot of different things, curious, right? So uh, the O, there's an acronym for the big five. O is openness to new experiences. The C stands for conscientiousness.
Okay.
The E is for extroversion or introversion. The A is for agreeableness versus conflict. And number 5 is neurosis, which is the detail oriented. So for me, of all those things in a startup world, open to new experience is really important. And it's on a continuum. Like you're
Yeah.
not yes or no, but it's high on openness to experience and conscientiousness. I do not hire or get involved with anyone intimately that is not conscientious, meaning that they say what they're going to, they're a person and a human of their word. You can rely on them. If they're going to be late, they're going to call. If they're going to, they're conscientious of other people and the team at large.
Yeah.
And so that is a really important part because on the other side of that are people who are can be doing a lot of harm
Yeah.
to companies and your personal life. So when you're choosing your partners, be careful to make sure that you're hiring and also matching with people who are conscientious. And if you're looking for extroversion versus introversion, look for the different jobs that require that. And agreeableness, you don't want people that are always yes men, because
Mhm.
that's dangerous and having groupthink, but also people who are not just combative, just to be combative and saying no and you're wrong just to argue. Those
Yeah.
are the attorney types. Not all attorneys, but you know the type.
Yeah.
So those are the 5 personality factors.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for spending time with me today.
Of
This was
course.
really
Well,
wonderful.
thank you for having me.
I learned a lot, and I learned a lot about CoachEra and you, and I'm very excited. I think I need to make my profile on
Yes.
CoachEra over there.
Yes.
So as we wrap up here, do you want to leave anyone with CoachEra and anyone talk about that really quickly?
Yeah, I think the main thing is CoachEra is there for you throughout your life changes. In the Erickson stages of life, there's all different transitions that we have between our 20s and our 30s and our 40s and our 50s and our 60s. And ultimately, at the end of life, when you look down the tunnel of your life, you want to live a life that was well lived. And so now you're in an opportunity in a position to be able to design and architect that life moving forward and control the things that are controllable. And when we go through financial difficult times, I implore people to invest in things that are going to add value for the long term. And I know the first thing people are like, I don't need a coach or psychologist. And, I have other, but your mental health and your ability to make good decisions is such an important time period in those transition points to make sure that you have people behind you that are helping you be able to think and hold space for you in a safe place to think about your vulnerabilities and your strengths. There are things people tell me that they would never be able to tell their partners. And so even though you might have a good community around you, to be able to share some of the more vulnerable parts with someone who really respects and understands that we all have our
Yeah.
downs and we all have our upturns. And so I want to let people know that CoachEra is there for them throughout their lifetime for different ages, and any support you need. There's a 30-minute free consultation that you can have right now. It comes directly to me as an entrepreneur. I want to make sure that I'm the one that is hand giving a white glove and hand holding people through the process. So for the onboarding for experts, if you want to join our community and have us shout you out and give you referrals, that's coacheras.com, coachera.com. And there's a button that says, I want to become a coach or get coaching. And you can do both
Nice.
and see all of our incredible coaches that are experts that are on there and join the best in class group and community that is really have their heart set on helping the human experience in a positive direction and see everyone optimize their performance and be able to seek their highest potential in life. That's my goal. The reason why I built CoachEra is to help people really see them in the highest light.
Nice. Well, thank you for all of that. I want to thank everybody for watching it and spending time with both of us. It was very wonderful. I want to finish up here with a little plug for this space at Office Logic. Once again, we're a co-working space. This room we're currently in is our podcast and content room. Members get to use it included in a drop-in basis. You can also reserve it if you needed to make a podcast. Starts at $45 an hour to reserve it, and members get to drop in. So feel free to come check it out. If you have any questions, feel free to DM me. And once again, thank you so much for joining me today. It was
Thank you.
wonderful.
It was a pleasure. It's wonderful to be here.
Thank you, everyone. And I will talk to you guys again soon. Bye bye.